I'm a little nervous, but and that would have made it easier for me. But there was a conflict. Joni's on vacation with her parents, so she's with me in spirit. And I just want to say that I appreciate Beth asking us to do this. Although when she did, I thought, wow, that's a tall order to talk about the resurrection. I mean, you can't get into the heart of Christianity any more than that. What can I possibly add that hasn't already been said a million times? And besides, you know, if you're up here, you have to be really clever and intelligent. But I said, I'll come up with something, and I'll write down the best sermon anybody's ever heard, and all the one copies of it. I'll post it on the internet and get my own website. That's just the way my mind goes. So what I decided to do is not write anything down, because if I start writing, then I find it necessary to try to be clever and intelligent and witty, and what I have to say has nothing to do with cleverness, intelligence, or wit. It's got to come from here. It's got to be real. And so that's why I didn't write anything down. And which is also a good thing, because I got to keep the 12 or 15 minutes. So by not writing anything down, I'll forget half of what I'm going to say. And then that way we get back to 12 minutes. But the story starts with my own understanding of the resurrection and God and Christianity. I mean, this really goes to the heart of everything, life itself. It starts in 1985. My last drink and drug was in 1985, on June 10th, 1985. And I had drank and drugged for about 15 years, pretty heavily. I mean, I was one of those teenage alcoholics and addicts. The thing is, though, I had this incredible resiliency, and I could escape. I was like Houdini, you know. I just was able to escape all these problems that I created for myself, and somehow managed to still be an overachiever in high school and in college. And I mean, I managed to keep my life pretty well managed in spite of drinking every night and smoking pot every day. I had this, and I used to think to myself, I can remember 18, 19 years old. Imagine how much you could do. Imagine how well you could do if you weren't stoned half the time. But, you know, it's just one of those things where I felt I didn't know any other way. It's just the way it is. So that was my identity. I was a party guy. Some guys were jocks, and some guys were brainiacs, and I was a party guy. And that was important to me. And slowly but surely, I became addicted to that lifestyle and couldn't find a way out. What happened was the happy-go-lucky party guy, by the time he was in his late 20s, was really out of control. The bottom, as we call it in AA, the bottom I hit, really lasted for about 5 years. And during that time, you mentioned couch surfing. I was never really technically homeless, but I had no place to live for months and years. I had no driver's license, and I didn't have a car. I mean, those are external things, but it makes life rough. And most importantly, what I didn't have is I didn't have any self-esteem. I hated myself. I hated the world and everybody, and felt abandoned. Of course, I was the one that abandoned everyone. I abandoned my own daughter. I had to pay child support for years. And it was a miserable, lonely, sad, ugly place to be. And I was there for like 4 years. I started coming into AA in 1980, 1981. And I didn't put that in that last drink until 1985. And the whole time knowing that I'm an alcoholic, it's kind of hard to kid yourself at that point. I mean, I was kidding myself as a young adult, but by the time I was in my late 20s, you can't have 4 DWIs and rationalize social drink, or, you know, it just doesn't work. And there's a point where you just can't play that game, and you know, no place to live, and you know, and just it's torturous to live like that and hate yourself and isolate. It's a disease of isolation. And, I understand what that means today. And so anyhow, that's what my life had become. Penniless, friendless, hopeless. Just an awful, awful place to be. Always had a court date pending. I always had a probation officer looking for me. And I never had any money, and I didn't have any friends. And I had all these court dates all the time that I managed to forget about. So I had, you know, problems piled up on top of problems. I while to get the idea of what it was like for me, at least, to be an alcoholic and an addict. And I tried it, and I was in and out, and in and out. And I could get 30 or 60 or 90 days of sobriety, but something would always happen that I would find it necessary to drink over. Some trauma, some letdown, some disappointment, an anger issue, usually came in. And I just could never string together any kind of sobriety. And one night, after my third rehab, I was at a meeting, because I knew that there were people getting better. Because I saw them in AA. And I knew that. I mean, I saw people getting a year chip, 2 years, 3 years. When I'm getting my 1 day or 30-day chip, I mean, I knew it was possible. And so I'm back again at an AA meeting, and I just got out of a rehab. So that would have made it in July of '85. I talked to this fellow, Richard. Richard's a key part of my story. There's two men that are key in my story, Richard and Will. And Richard said, Mike, welcome back again. And I think that if you work all 12 steps, you'll find that this thing's a lot more effective. I said, Richard, I'm trying. I'm working my way up there. I'm, doing 5, 6, and I'm trying, buddy. But I just can never get there. Something always happens. And he says, well, the 12th step is really the one that you got to work. And that's the one that says we're of service to other people, that we carry the message to the still suffering alcoholic. And I said, Richard, I'm the still suffering alcoholic here. But, I'm a loser. I've been coming around for years, and I have, 30 days of sobriety for the umpteenth time? What can I possibly give? What do I bring to the table? And he said, everything. You have a lot to give. You got 30 days of sobriety, that's more than 30 minutes. He said, Mike, you're going to have to help other alcoholics in order to get the help that you need. You don't get better and then help other people. You should read the history, read how this whole thing got started. Bill found Bob, and then Bob found number 3 together. They needed each other. You need to work with other people. I said, Richard, that is the craziest thing. I finally get humble enough to ask for help. Sincerely, humbly ask for help, which is very hard to do, for me anyway. And you're telling me, since I need help, you're saying go help him. And he said, that's exactly what I'm saying. I said, Richard, that's asinine. And he said, well, look, I said, who wants to listen to me, a retread, in and out all these years? What can I possibly offer anybody? It's guys like you that have a couple years of sobriety. He said, guy like me, he said, I was in 9 rehabs. And I was just like you, and I finally understood that it's a 12-step program. And that 12 steps probably one of the most just as important as the first step. You've got to work with other people. You've got to love your brother and work with them. And I said, all right, I heard bad enough, I'll take the stupid suggestions. So he says, you call the AA hotline, and you tell them your story, you tell them you got 30 days of sobriety, and see if they aren't welcome to have you down after starting from the phone. I said, all right. So I did. The next day I called the AA desk, and I told him my story. A fellow named Lee answered the phone. I told him my, 5-year bottom that I was on, and he said, come on down. We got a slot on Wednesday afternoons. I said, okay. So I went down there and started answering the AA phones. First time in my life I ever volunteered to do anything. First, that didn't have something in it for me. Or so I thought, because nobody gets paid in AA. But I went down and started answering these phones in these 4-hour slots on Wednesday afternoons. I felt better about myself because I did meet people. I did talk to people over the phone who were actually worse off than me, believe it or not. There are some sicker puppies in the world than mine. And I was intimidated. And one day I got the most important phone call. It was from a homeless shelter, big one. CCND, anybody familiar with Mitch Snyder's creative, the Center for Creative Nonviolence? Yeah. Big homeless shelter down 14th Street Northwest. 200-300 residents, big place. And they didn't have AA meetings. And most of you, I'm sure you know that alcoholism and mental illness, which go hand in hand, major cause for homelessness. And to not have an AA meeting in a homeless shelter of that size, I thought was odd. But they said, yeah, we need somebody down here to bring AA meetings, so we're calling Alcoholics Anonymous. I said, okay. I rounded up some of my buddies and my girlfriend, who's now my wife, Joni. This was a date. Hey, you want to go downtown? And I got to tell you, that's one of the scariest places I have ever been. And I've been to some scary places. Like Prince George's County Jail is a scary place. But in the jail, the bad guys don't have far to run. CCNB, I mean, they can hurt you and run. And there's no guards. So we went down there and started an AA meeting. And then we went down the following week, and the following week, and the following week. And I met this guy, this other guy who was instrumental. His name was Will. He was an old, frail guy. A short man, frail, sick, alcoholic, in a homeless shelter. And that's a rough place. I mean, there's a lot of thugs down there. It's a bad, hard place to be, even if you are young and strong and healthy. So it's particularly hard on this poor guy, Will. And I befriended Will. And I started seeing Will even when it wasn't the regular Wednesday night meeting. And took Will out to get some food and help out with housing, some safe housing out in the county, and some medical care. And Joni and I became Will's friend, this old homeless man. And I suddenly realized that, I'm feeling better about myself. I don't hate myself as much as I used to, and I don't hate everybody else as much as I used to. And Richard knew exactly what he was talking about. That you can't love your brother until you love yourself. And by loving your brother, you learn to love yourself. That's what I didn't get. I thought that was stupid. That's my resurrection. That's the death that I had to experience was this thing we call bondage of self. I was so wrapped up in money. Help me, help me, help me. Richard said, help him. Therein lies your salvation. And I thought, that's stupid. But I was so desperate, I'll try this anyway. It's kind of like the reading today. You don't always recognize your Savior. Richard was my Savior. He had the message. I choose to think that God worked through Richard and spoke through him. Because I'm telling you, I could have read the gospel a million times and not heard the message. It's the same message that's in the Bible, but it had to come from a drunk. I mean, I don't know why that is, but it is. And the message that we give to each other, the testimony that we provide to one another in our meetings, and it only takes two to have an AA meeting. So when two of us are in the truck, we're having a meeting. That's what we do, is we share our testimony. We laugh at our stupidity, and it's healing, and it's togetherness, and it's bonding, and it's a powerful thing. And now I get to do for guys what Richard did for me, which is save my life. He saved my life. Because I was dying. And so today, and it just felt so good working with this guy Will and starting this meeting in the shelter. And there was a few other sincere people in that shelter, not many, but Will in particular was sincere. And because of him and the feeling that I got, feeling useful for once and not being a drain on everybody. Nobody liked to see Mike coming through the door, but Will did. And that's what gave me a renewed interest in my life. And I said to Joni, this is really cool. I wish I could do this all the time. Problem is, we were talking about getting married and starting a family, all the realities of housing, a good neighborhood to raise your kids, and blah, blah, blah. There's no way you can do that full time. And have, at least I didn't have those kind of resources. Hell, I didn't have a car. That's why I needed a date with Joni to get me but it was such a powerful experience that I committed myself to that one of these days I'm going to do this stuff full time because it works. It works like a charm. And I'm going to work hard. I'm going to try to retire early and do this all the time. Find the wills. There's lots of wills out there in this world, and I want to work with them. And so life's been good. All that overachievement stuff that I managed to pull off even when I was using, and I used to think to myself, hey, what could you do if you weren't stoned at the time? Well, now I know. I mean, I did really well, and I really kicked butt in business the last 20 years, and I've retired from the company I started, and I have really good nest egg. So I bought a house a year and a half ago and dedicated it to men recovering from alcoholism and drug addiction. So now I've got 8 guys in that house, 8 brothers, sons, whatever you want to call them. And together we get sober. They keep me sober and I keep them sober.
Just like, Richard helped me, I helped Richard too, by being a subject of his love, being somebody that he could try to help. Now I get to do that. And I've never been happier. I mean, it's just the most wonderful life that I have today. And this was a guy who 21 years ago was absolutely miserable, who hated everybody, hated himself, who really understood why people commit suicide. I mean, I got it. I know how that man feels that takes his own life. And today, I can't wait. Every morning, I'm excited about every morning. You know what? Yesterday, I worked for about 12 hours. I didn't make a dime. I moved furniture in the morning, I spread mulch in the afternoon, and I stained the deck in the evening. Dirty, cut and bruised and scraped and tired last night. But, man, I felt like $1 million. Because I worked with 3 recovering alcoholics all day. One of them was a 19-year-old kid, recovering heroin addict. 19-year-old kid, 2 months clean and sober. So happy to work with. He never met an adult that he could talk to. I was the first guy he ever first grown up, And I'm not really, but, to him, I look like a grown up. So, that was magical. Absolutely magical to work with him. And so that's what I do today is I take what Richard said to heart. And I'll never forget what he said. He said, you can't get sober and then help another alcoholic. You've got to help another alcoholic in order to get sober. And he says, you can't, as far as this golden rule stuff, treat others the way you want to be treated. Look how you treat yourself. That's not going to work. You gotta love others so that you can love yourself. So that you are worthy of being treated well. He nailed it. And then I got to thinking, you know what, that's really the essence of what Jesus Christ was telling us the whole time. That's what that's all about. The resurrection, that you have to die to be born again. And that you have to believe in his message. And his message was, do as I do. Be a healer. Be helpful. It's not about accumulating wealth. It's about, you got to give it away in order to keep it. As we say in AA. I don't think Jesus used that term, but that's the gist of the whole thing. That's what the resurrection means to me. That's what redemption is, and that's what salvation is, and it's right here and now. I'll be honest with you, I'm still not sure about the afterlife and heaven and hell. I don't know if I buy into that whole thing or not. But I know for a fact that you can live in heaven here, and you can live in hell right here too. And so for what I'm sure of, I only have so much faith, but I do believe in what I see and hear and feel, and that is right here on this planet today. And today, I'd much rather be happy, joyous, and free as opposed to the living hell that I live in. So I think redemption and salvation for me anyway is right here and now, and I think that's what God wants from me, and he wants me to be happy, joyous, and free. He doesn't like a miserable life. I can't do his work if I'm miserable, because I'm all wrapped up in the bondage of my own self. I have to get out there and be. It's like I have no choice. And when people try to compliment me and say, oh, you're doing such a wonderful job, you're so helpful, and blah, 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 good for you. You know what? I don't want any praise. I don't want any thanks. I'm not trying to save the world. I'm just trying to save money. That's really what it's all about, because I'll forget. I will forget how miserable I used to be, and I'll go right back to that crazy, self-destructive kind of behavior if I'm not careful. So I have to stay vigilant every day. We say in AA that all we have is a daily reprieve contingent on our spiritual life. And for me, the spiritual life is working with this kid yesterday. That's where it's at. So thank you for letting me share my story. And as we say in AA, I will keep